The voice of the crowd demanded the game become professional. Once it became professional, the sport developed quickly. The earliest known surviving piece of film of Scottish football shows Dundee playing Raith Rovers in 1911. The first match recorded may not look too useful as a training film, but the size of the crowd shows what was happening to football. Its popularity was to make the game a focus of national feeling. By 1921, Hampden Park had already established itself as a place of pilgrimage, the nearest thing Scotland had to a national assembly. It was especially important to beat England, as if football had become a bloodless way to recycle history and see if we could get the result right this time. In 1921, Scotland won 3-0. But if Scotland sometimes won the war, it always lost the peace. Success meant that more and more players were enticed away to play in the wealthier English League. The North meant Newcastle, the hope was fulfilled. They won the English League Championship in 1927. But the names of 5 of the players suggested a wider meaning of North. Maitland, Mackenzie, Mackay, MacDonald and Harris. They were all Scottish. Another was one of the legendary names of Scottish football, the captain, Hughie Gallagher. 20 Scottish caps, 23 goals for Scotland.
Well, my first meeting with Hugh Gallagher was when he played for Queen of the South. And I was playing for our Strollers then. And Hughie Gallagher was playing for Queen of the South. And the next time I met him, he was playing for Airdrie. Bob McPhail, they had a great forward line, McPhail and Gallagher and Somerville and others like that.
He was a great centre forward. But nobody got on well with Hugh Gallagher because I remember him giving me a row for scoring a goal. I headed a goal. Jimmy Reid crossed one and I headed it in. And he said to me, "You'd no right to be there." He says, "That's my job." He used to come properly dressed to Airdrie in the morning, do his training. And then if he went down in the afternoon to Bells Hill, you would see him sitting at the corner the way a miner sits. And he seemed to have the personality for Airdrie and then for the miners and the people that he lived with amongst.
Now, Hugh Gallagher was from Bellshill, my home. And the strange thing about Hugh, despite the fact he was probably the one or two, him and Alec James were probably the outstanding players of the day. He came from Bellshill. They wanted me to go and train with him, and I was an entity. No, I didn't. I wasn't in nothing. But Hugh Gallagher sent down for me to go and do a wee bit training with him, and it was very, very good. And sadly, everything seemed to go wrong. But there we are.
I met Hughie years afterwards after he'd finished playing, and he brought his children to see me at Newcastle. There was some match at Newcastle, and we talked about old times because he always said that I protected him from being sent off or getting cautioned and so on, because when players knew that he was a bit quick-tempered, they intimidated him a bit. And he always said that I protected him, which may be true.
He didn't find too much protection outside football. Besides playing in England, Hughie Gallagher was part of another, sadder Scottish tradition. He was unable to reconcile his talent with his private life. Once off the field forever, the way he aged reflected his inner turmoil, and he committed suicide at 54. He lives, as they say, in memory. One of the reasons the name of Hughie Gallagher lives on is that he was a member of the Scottish team that is perhaps the most celebrated ever to play against England. In 1928, the two teams met at Wembley. The Duke of York, later to become King George VI, was there. The preliminaries, as usual, were impeccably polite. The game was a sporting slaughter. Like the bleached bones of a dead lion, the film footage tells us little of the reality that was. It conveys no sense of the power the team called the Wembley Wizards, were to exercise over the Scottish imagination. Today we are left with a scoreline, England 1, Scotland 5, and the memory of some great names who played there, Hughie Gallagher, Alan Morton, and another player, no less renowned than these two.
Arsenal versus Everton, and Arsenal not long in getting off the mark. And who should score the first goal? None other than Alex James.
Alex James, and I remember him vividly. He's Vaseline in his face and like a boxer, and he must have thought I was going to hit him, you know. And Vaseline in his knees and cocky to a degree, you know. Grinning, sneering face, you know. A genius. He knew who could play.
Alec James won his place in the pantheon of Scottish football, not just because he was a great player, but a great player whose football had a Scottish accent, a pronounced and arrogant individuality that defied technical analysis. It was just there, like Scotland's continuing belief in itself. The special character of the Scottish game was forged mainly in a special place, the industrial west of Scotland. To the people who endured there the harshness of the work and the bleakness of the living conditions, football offered a form of release. For those who watched, it was a temporary escape into something which, at its best, was beautiful. For those who could play it well enough, the escape might be permanent.
Oh, well, when I started first, I had $150 a week. Now, everybody, they laugh at that $150 a week, but when you take $150, my pals were earning 50p, 10 shillings. Learned trades. Now, I had 3 times their wage, so everything was relative. I think I got 50 pence of a rise the next year, and I got into the first team here, I had a $5. Now, that was more than my father had to keep a family.
Oh, football was part of your life. It was. My father's run the miners, 1926, the miners' strike. He run the Soup Kitchen Cup, and then I played in Bellshill in the Soup Kitchen Cup against the Bellshill Endurables. I'm not going to tell you what they were, but they were orange. And they met me in the pit of Polly and gave me a dew. No, they were good days. But Puck Ewart, those players, all these players played then, no, in the Soup Kitchen Cup. All the seniors played then.
A lot of the players came from mining communities, and the area around Bellshill has some claim to being the unofficial capital of Scottish football.
Because that was the hungry days then, you know. They're hungry boys. It's the only way they could get away from where they were. They can get from A to B. They could get out of the pits and they get onto to playing for £10 a week, which is a fortune then. Full time, my God. Mark Busby must have played for money like that when he started. Must have. That's how the boys had to do it.
Well, not only miners, I think it drove every young chap, because in those days, they talked about the good old days, but they were the good old bad days because there was no money. You see, and everybody, if you were a professional footballer, you were something in these days. And it was every boy's dream. I know it was mine. And if you're a professional footballer, you were something in those days.
It was the players' own people who made them something. The footballer became the essential working-class hero. Someone who gave the fans a heightened sense of themselves in a language they understood. They came in their droves. In 1937, over 147,000 people turned up at Hampden Park to watch Celtic beat Aberdeen 2-1 in the Scottish Cup final. Besides the admission money, they were paying tribute to an expression of their shared identity. Here at least was one kind of public Scottishness.
Princess Elizabeth, next to Monty, was watching, I believe, her first international.
You have to wonder how neutral the VIP spectators were. 1944. Even during a war, the United Kingdom subdivided itself for football. These were unofficial internationals. The result was not to become a part of the official record of contests. In this case, that was just as well for Scotland. The score was England 6, Scotland 2. But these were only limbering up exercises. The wartime games kept national differences tuned up for when the ball would be kicked again in earnest.
North again for a look in on Queen's Park.
After the war, Queen's Park were still in the Scottish First Division. They were a noble throwback in a still developing game. The team continued to bring on some good players, but professional teams were always waiting to lure away the promising talent, like the 17-year-old Ronnie Simpson, destined to win a European Cup winners' medal with Celtic in 1967.